I'm with Keller Williams, and I'm with Jaimee Davis of Allstate in Spring Hill. We're both members of Networking Today International, and Jaimee was our guest speaker today, so I thought I'd do a little interview with the folks who couldn't make it so you could hear a little bit about how she does her insurance business, because she's a very good, ethical, and caring agent, and that's one of the reasons I love referring people to her. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Jen.
Good. Thank you so much for presenting. I know we talked about the property and the casualty that you do, but we also talked a lot about life and long-term care today. And you wanted to start by just telling us why life insurance is so important to you.
Life insurance to me really hits home, and one of the reasons it really hits home is because when I was at 12 years old, my mother died of cancer. And she did not have life insurance, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and I think that undervalued how much she did do in our house, and it made a huge impact on my life. And I've had friends that had parents die, and their life was drastically different. So that has been a mission of mine, to make sure that everybody knows that story, so they know how important it is for their family.
Right. So there's a lot of people, and I had a large discussion previously that I needed life insurance, and I had 2 sets of twins, and at that time they were under the age of 5, and I was trying to explain that it was a key position holder, which is something that people know about in the business world. You have a certain additional policy if you have a vice president, a CFO, a president of a company that is an integral part. There's a different insurance policy. It's key person policy. And so a stay-at-home mom, people don't understand how that can impact a family when that person overnight disappears. How are the children going to get to school? Who's going to be taking off from work if somebody needs to stay home? The children are going to need additional just love and care, and so to be able to pay a nanny or someone to come in and assist with that, it does change the life drastically. Just as much as a person who has an income that needs replaced. So I completely agree with you on that. Is there anything that you would like to share about the different types of policies, like just kind of nutshell about some of the things that, like, gosh, I really don't have a lot of money, I really don't know if I need to do this, the best stages to get it, that sort of thing that you'd like to share about life in general?
So in general, life insurance is going to be best to get it when you're young and you're healthy, because you can get a lot of insurance for a little cost because you're healthy, you're young, and you're going to live a long time. But what I like to do with my clients is really have a discussion about their life, their needs, and what their family needs, because everybody needs a different amount.
Right.
And I always tell my clients, because some people can get what their need is, and some people can only afford so much in their budget. So I always tell them, we go through it so you know what your need is, because you need to know your need for your family. You need to know what that life insurance number is, what income amount, what money amount do you need to replace you. But the other thing is, if you can't afford it, but you know there's a need, then we back into it. If you can afford a certain amount per month, you don't have anything or you don't have enough, we're going to back into that. So you can at least start, and your family at least has something. People really don't realize that. Just because somebody gives you, you have a need of $1 million and the price is X and you can't afford it, you still have that need. So let's get as much as you can, what you can afford. So that's really important to me, that I really take the time with each client to make sure I get their need, because your need for your family is going to be different than my need for my family. And if somebody just says X amount of your income, that might not be an adequate amount for your actual need.
Right. And so a lot of people know that I have a granddaughter, and when my granddaughter was born, because I understood the importance of the mom having insurance, even though Mariah isn't working, she was helping me with my, as my assistant, I felt it was important to not impact my other children's life. If something happened to Mariah, raising a then infant would have changed it drastically. So I had insurance, and I know this is all very specific, but like her insurance policy is maybe $25. I mean, it's very inexpensive. Yes. I'm not going to say to people watching this that your insurance is going to be $25, but people think inexpensive. Oh, well, what is that, like $165? No, that's pretty high in life insurance world monthly. So there's different things that you can do. I know another thing that scares a lot of people is, I was discussing that on the insurance ratings, I'm considered overweight. And so there's an additional charge on that. But there are policies where you don't have to go through underwriting. So I know that's another thing that scares a lot of people off, in addition to what's it going to cost? So you do want to address that you mentioned there was
Yes,
a policy
so
that didn't have.
you don't necessarily have to go through underwriting. There are policies out there. I do offer a policy that is not underwritten. So you do have to be able to answer the questions, but it's not, you're not going to go have to and get the underwriting portion of it, which is going to be in a typical policy. They're going to take your height, your weight, your blood, your urine. And that's just to really comb through to make sure there's nothing in there that you may not be aware of either, because that's really what happens when something comes back. It's really the fact that the client's not even aware of it.
Right.
One time I had somebody come back and they had elevated levels of a certain hormone, and she was pregnant, and that's how she found out she was pregnant. So that was a surprise to her.
Right.
So yeah, and life insurance, yes, you get it young, you get it cheap. It's not going to be expensive at all, and the biggest benefit to life insurance, which we talked about today, Jennifer, is I have several different policies that can fit your life. But one of the wonderful benefits is when somebody dies, their estate, everything goes to probate. Anything that they owe comes out of that estate. Also, if they have to be buried, you can't pay for it unless they have cash on hand, or you have cash on hand. First, you got to sell the house and sell the belongings to pay for it. And all of that then pays for all the debt. Life insurance is free money that you can give to somebody. They don't have to pay it back. If you owe debt, they don't have to pay anything towards your debt with that life insurance if they don't want to. It's your gift to them. It's the way you give to them after you've already left.
Right. And the other thing that we didn't talk about today, but I know we've talked about in the past, is I don't need life insurance. I have life insurance through my work. So do you want to address some of the misconceptions or the loophole that they could get themselves into if they don't have even a small external policy from work?
Yeah, so I say if you have life insurance at work, that's wonderful. And you need to buy as much as you can at work. Typically, you're not going to go through underwriting at work. Typically, it's going to be cheaper because it's on a group rate. All of those things are great. The downfall is that if something happens, typically it's a group rate, and you either cannot take it with you if you leave the job for whatever reason, or if you can, it's expensive. I do have one client that had life insurance at work, ended up getting cancer and having to leave work because she couldn't work anymore. And then what happens? She not only does she not have life insurance because it was a group policy at work, but now the only policy that is available to her is a policy that is a guaranteed issue policy, which means that anybody can get it regardless of their health, but it's not going to pay out the full death benefit unless they can live 2 full years. Well, when you're suffering with cancer and you're going through treatments, and in the stage that my particular person, you might not make it 2 full years, or you may, but either way, it's not going to be the amount of coverage that she needs for her family. Those are very small policies. So that's all something to think about. So yeah, get life insurance through work. Get as much as you can. Get a small policy outside of work so you have something in case your life changes.
Right. And then the other thing, just to circle back around to a minute, when you were saying that you talked to people about their specific needs. I know that I've told you about my friend who was unexpectedly widowed, and it's something not to delay on. They had the life insurance policy ready. They had an appointment scheduled. They couldn't all get together for about 5 days. They knew that it was probably insufficient for the children that they had and the ages of their children. And he died unexpectedly 3 days before that appointment. And so the other thing is, if somebody's telling you, hey, you have a gap, it's not because Jaimee is trying to push you into getting it. It's because she has seen things happen. I have seen things happen, and no one wants that to happen to somebody that we could have addressed beforehand. The same thing we were talking about, that you've had friends and families and friends of friends who you're like, oh no, they've passed. I should have been more, not pushy, but explaining in where this coverage was lacking and how it could impact, especially when it is relatively reasonable. There are reasonable rates to be had. So the other thing that we talked about today that impacts entire families is the long-term care. Y'all know that my grandma was 100, and her assets ran out about 2 years ago, or she'll be 100 in December, and her assets ran out about 2 years ago, and it was a lot of discussion in the family of how are we going to keep grandma in the assisted community that she's in, because moving at that age and in her condition probably would have been detrimental to her health in and of itself. And I know that you have experienced that too. So do you want to share a little bit about when to get long-term care insurance? Who needs to look at long-term care insurance? You know, if you're working with Kelly Chris and you've got an investment portfolio to assist you in older age where you're taking some of that burden of the insurance off, and like just talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah. So long-term care insurance is great because it's one of those things that is going to give you care if you're not able to do so. And a lot of people, you know, say, I have kids and I don't need long-term care. My kids will take care of me. And that's true, they can, but you really don't know the situation of, you know, where your children will be, if that will be something that will be feasible for them at that point, or do you just not want to burden them? You know, when you were raising your kids, you know, you were raising your kids, you remember how busy that portion of your life is. So you really want to consider that. A lot of times I feel like it's extremely important that people have long-term care when you have a couple that's together that has no children, because you need care. You also need to have that trusted person that can take care of that for you. And just because you have kids, you know, I have somebody that's dear to me that has 3 daughters, and her grandchild is taking care of her. So her daughters aren't even taking care of her. So that just tells you you don't know where people are going to be in life and what their decisions are going to be. And the best time to get long-term care is probably going to be in your 50s and early 60s. Because at that point you're still young enough, you're still working usually, you can afford it. There's a lot of policies out there. There's a lot of hybrid policies out there now. You can go to the traditional route with long-term care, or you can go to a hybrid policy that pairs up as a life insurance policy as well. And
so is that the one that if you don't make it to older age, and if you pass in some method before you've used it or used all of it, then that goes as a life insurance policy? Okay, that's what I thought that one was.
Yeah, that's what that is. It's paired up as a life insurance policy. So if you end up dying suddenly, your family is still getting something from that policy, from what you've paid in. They're still getting a death benefit is what it is.
Right. So both of these are really taking care of the ones who love you. I know before I did real estate, I did senior move management. And what we were trying to explain to a lot of the clients, including their adult children who were help transitioning them, it is hardest on the caregiver. And if you are, like in my grandmother's situation, she's going to be 100. My mother is approaching 80, and her siblings are all in their 70s. That is older age. They're all in relatively good health, but the burden of caring daily for my grandmother would be excessive on them physically as well as emotionally. So when you have that long-term care policy, you're able to have someone partner with and take a lot of that burden off, who also has the experience to look for different things when caring for that older person, which a lot of people don't think about, even if they're thinking, hey, my family is going to help me with this. It is a burden that they're willing to accept, but a lot of times the caregiver's health is drastically impacted in caring for the senior adult. So it's really about your passion for helping people, and that brings me to my last thing I want to address with you today. I know you're incredibly passionate about insurance. I know you really very much ask people the questions. When we talked about property and casualty, do you know what 50-25 means to you? Do you know what 130-300 means? If you don't know what those means, give Jaimee a call and ask her what that means, because it's important that you know that if you have an automobile. But the other thing where your passion shows, and Allstate's passion shows, is through giving to the community. So would you like to share a little bit about Allstate's giving back, as well as what you personally like to give back to Spring Hill and the area community?
Absolutely. So Allstate loves to give back. They actually encourage all their agents to give back through Helping Hands grants. So they encourage their agents to volunteer for nonprofit organizations, and then they give money on that behalf, not to mention things that they have going on corporately. They do Breast Cancer for America. They do X to Text, because they're really passionate about their children not texting and teenagers not texting. They also do the Purple Purse Foundation, which is domestic violence. We at my agency were really passionate about animals and helping out and volunteering for animals. Tennessee Children's Home's a big thing for me. I just have found a place in my heart for those young boys, and just the challenges they're going through. And we're going to do the turkey burn again this year. So if you want to run the Saturday after
Or
Thanksgiving.
walk run.
Feel free to call my office and I'll get you hooked up with that as well. We'll be there doing that. But, you know, I think it's really important to give back, and I think it's really important to love and support everybody else. So I do my best to support my insurance as well as our community, because we have a great community. And Allstate, you know, they encourage us to get out there and do that, and I love that about our company.
Right, thank you. And if somebody has been watching this and wants to get in touch with you, I will put the information in text at where we post this. But what is the best way to reach you? Like a couple of ways.
Yeah, the best way to reach me is you can Google me, Jaimee Davis, Jaimee Davis Allstate, or you can give me a call at 615-392-1122. I'll be here, but I also have a wonderful, fabulous staff, and there's a lot of agents in my office, and they all can help out just as much as I can. So look forward to hearing from you all.
Thank you for letting us speak with you today and sharing a little bit about yourself.
Yes.